Hello and welcome into Illini Drive Thursday night. I'm Isaac Trotter, joined alongside Eli Schuster. Brian Binz is back in studio, and we have a new producer today. Alex Aguilera has made his return to the dream team.
It's the good old boys back in the studio.
Alex is back. He. If you didn't know, Alex was our producer last year for the whole show. He decided to move up on the ranks and go to the Monday Wednesday crew.
Move up.
Well, maybe we demoted him to the AAA team. We demoted you to the AAA team.
You weren't demoted. You just needed to go help out someone who was struggling.
Yeah.
And so you went and you helped out
We saw a place of need, and so we inserted a fix.
Because Tuesday and Thursday is clearly the better option.
Right. Well, so our regular producer, Tatiana Perry, was out today. So we checked the waiver wire. Alex Aguilera was there and available. We scooped him up.
Value.
And we're going to have him today for a show. When we have a loaded show
You
planned.
got like 15 fantasy points last week, didn't you? That's pretty good. I heard you were working the board real well.
Yeah, I'm undefeated as of right now. I think me and Isaac are don't.
In a points per fade-in league, Alex is very good.
All right, let's go.
Isaac, if you come to this show, you get praised. You just get endless praise. So maybe you should come back. And Tati, both of you.
We should have a dual producer show.
Yeah, exactly.
The show that we got planned for you today is we're going to talk Illinois. Of course, they're going to play Penn State tomorrow night. That game starts at 8 o'clock Central Time. It'll be on FS1. We'll also talk a little bit of NBA. If you didn't hear, big news out of Minnesota. Their star, Jimmy Butler, decides that he wants to get out of there. Some people have responded in a really good way. Andrew Wiggins, his brother, was really happy about it. We'll see what Karl Anthony Towns thinks of that thing. Brian Binz, a big NBA guy. Of course, Eli and I both like the NBA, so we'll definitely get into that a little bit. The Bulls obviously must have won that trade, and we'll break that down even a little bit more. But it's also a huge weekend for Illinois basketball. They'll have 3 big-time recruits on campus. Oscar Tshiebwe, 5-star center. He is already on campus as of this afternoon. He will be here for the weekend. Then, of course, E.J. Liddell, the big-time recruit out of St. Louis. He will be up on campus tomorrow. You can go to Ubben, the University of Illinois practice facility for men's basketball at 3 o'clock. Ubben will be the spot where you're gonna see it'll be open, unlocked for all fans to come in, and you can see these 3 guys work out. They'll scrimmage with the team a little bit, so it'll be a really fun time at 3 o'clock tomorrow. And then, of course, you can head over to Memorial Stadium and watch Illinois tangle with Penn State, who's ranked 10th in the country. So, boys, we're gonna get right into it. NBA, Jimmy Butler. You trade the Bulls trade. They get Lauri Markkanen. They trade Minnesota Jimmy Butler in the 16th pick in the draft for Lauri Markkanen. You also get Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn, and now Jimmy Butler wants to get gone. Binz, what the heck is going on up in Minnesota? And does Tom Thibodeau ride this out?
No, I think Tom Thibodeau has actually gone on record saying he'd rather leave than stay and rebuild if Jimmy Butler left, and that was kind of their all-in move last year. Was kind of trading in all their assets for this superstar in Jimmy Butler. And yes, he is a superstar in the league, probably one of the best 15, 20 players in the league. But unfortunately, the fit was not good. Jimmy Butler does not like playing with young guys. And I think that's something the Timberwolves learned pretty quick, because it seemed during the year there was some reports and some just kind of rumors that not all was peachy in that Wolves locker room with between Thibodeau and the young guys, between Jimmy Butler and the young guys. And I think you've seen in this offseason Thibodeau moving more towards his old style of like older guys. I mean, the Timber Bulls joke has been run to the ground, but that's because it's true. He's picking up all these old veterans, and I'm sure that's probably not doing wonders for guys like Wiggins and Towns, who are still both under 25 and younger years old. So I don't know. It's just a rough situation to go all in like that and then completely fail.
But at the end of the day, it does make a little bit of sense to me. I think when you see Jimmy Butler's personality, he's a winner. He's going to do everything it takes to win. And when you look at Karl Anthony Towns and you look at Andrew Wiggins, especially when you watch Wiggins play, sometimes you question if he has that oomph in him. Does he have that dog in him that he wants to go out and do whatever it takes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which is one of the reasons why he was drafted so high up a couple years ago, because of his defensive upside. But Butler has also said that he has 3 teams that he would want to be traded to: the Brooklyn Nets, the Los Angeles Clippers, and then the New York Knicks. And those are the 3 spots that have 2 max player available. So that means they could sign Jimmy Butler, and then they can go out in 2019, which is a huge thing too. Eli's
I just disagree with something.
Okay, hold on. What's up?
Well, just something that you were talking about with the fact that Butler and winning with this team. It's not necessarily disagreeing with what you said, but talking about him winning with this team. He wants to win, and I think you can easily win with this team. This is a very good basketball. This is a very good basketball
the fourth
team.
Seed in the West till he got injured.
Exactly. So what I want to point out is that this is why I'm kind of frustrated with Jimmy Butler and was frustrated with him when he was on the Bulls as well. This is a guy that he can win where he was. He could have won with the Bulls, to be completely honest.
They made the playoffs last year. He was there,
and he could have. And if he stuck around and things went well, then they could have pieced things together and he could have won there. I mean, that situation's a little bit different, obviously, than what he has now. But I'm starting to think, especially after seeing the situation that's going on in Minnesota right now, that he's just kind of a toxic presence on the team.
Like anybody.
And before I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I said, okay, the Bulls situation was not great. I mean, it wasn't. And the guard packs thing, I mean, that's not fantastic for him to have to deal with the executives in the front office. And so that I understood. I said, okay. And then he went to Minnesota, and he had all of the chance in the world to win in Minnesota. When you have Karl Anthony Towns and you have Andrew Wiggins, I don't care about their flaws or whatever. Those are two extremely talented players. And you have that nucleus right there with those three.
And Jeff Teague and Taj Gibson. Those are two starter quality players in the league.
And Derrick Rose.
And you can go but no, you can go and you can win. And if you go out and get a couple more pieces, you can go and win. So now, to me, this isn't about the Timberwolves situation. This is about me. He does not want to play on a team with another superstar. Look at the teams he's naming.
No, I disagree with you a little bit. I know. I see what you're saying. I see the premise there.
He said the Nets.
I know.
Because what's he want to do? He wants to go be the guy.
He wants to go get paid. And all of these three places can afford 2 max contracts. And if he wants to be with the Clippers, he's tight with their owner. He's tight with their thing. If he wants to really be with the Clippers, there's an opportunity there. Because there's a lot of free agents in this 2019
Okay, sure. But let's go back
there.
to the point that we were talking about here. Where, the point that I think is important to talk about is we say he wants to go get paid. But for me, no, he wants to go be the guy. And I talked about this on the show before. I think when I talked about this last year when we would bring up Jimmy Butler. And I'd say that, I'm scared that he wants to be the guy. And I said many times that I was scared this wasn't going to work out in Minnesota because it's him and Karl Anthony Towns. And Karl Anthony Towns was the guy before he got there. And a lot of people think he still could be the guy. And so he can't play on a team where he's not the guy. And that's with when the Bulls were looking like they were going to have to start going and getting new pieces and things like that. I think Butler got a little worried. And now that he's on the Timberwolves, he realized, okay, I can't play with another guy like Karl Anthony Towns. And so the teams he's naming, I think, are strategic in the sense that, yes, he can go get a max contract, sure. I think he knew he was going to get a max contract no matter what in any situation in the future. But I think that he's looking at the Nets, and he's looking at the Clippers especially, even the Knicks, because the Knicks are not great with their situation. I mean, they have Porzingis, but...
Yeah, but if they have an extra spot and they went Kyrie and then they put Jimmy Butler and Porzingis together, that's a team that can
Kevin
compete.
Knox.
The only other person that he'd be... The only superstar that he would be okay with...
And RJ Barrett this year in the draft.
The only superstar that he would be okay with playing with, in my eyes, is Kyrie, because they've talked about how they wanted to play together before. But... Nets and Clippers are on that list for a reason. And while the max contract may be part of it, it is also because I think he wants to go to a team and he can be the guy, and he would do that on both those teams.
And I think that's the question you have to ask if you're the Clippers, Nets, and Knicks, is because you've seen Jimmy Butler be a problem in the locker room in 2 different styles of locker room. You had the Bulls at the end of his time were very veteran heavy. You had Rondo, you had Wade, you had Jimmy Butler, you had Robin Lopez. Who was their starting power forward? Mirotic. Those are all vets Hoiberg's not a veteran coach, but I mean, he has turned out to be at least like an average NBA coach. Like, he wasn't a disaster
he's
when he was there. He wasn't a disaster when he was there. And then he moves to the Bulls. He's got his the Timberwolves. He's got his old coach in Thibodeau. He's got a bunch of talented young guys around him, and he was very clearly the number one option, especially in that playoff series against Houston. Anyone who watched that series knew that Towns was definitely deferring to Jimmy Butler in that series, and that ended up with them getting swept. But that's another story. If you're the Clippers have a young team now because they've basically gotten rid of all the Lob City era Clipper stuff. The Nets obviously have a young team. The Knicks will have a young team. Do you risk bringing in Jimmy Butler when he could potentially stunt these young players' career? Like, what if he comes in and he and Porzingis have a rift?
I think if he goes to the Knicks, him and Porzingis 100%.
Porzingis' contract is going to be up before Butler's, so he might leave if he doesn't like Jimmy Butler. So I think that's a huge risk you have to take because at this point in his career, there's no other way to look at Jimmy Butler other than a guy who's been a malcontent everywhere he's gone.
And let's be honest here, Minnesota has all the leverage. Sure, Jimmy Butler flexes his muscles, but Minnesota can say, no, we're not trading you. We're going to keep you right here. And Tom Thibodeau, I wouldn't put it past him for a moment to do something like that.
I can 100% see it too, but then you honestly, I think if you are the Timberwolves, then you should just get rid of him at this point.
Completely
because
agree.
And they need to move
look
on.
at they need to look at this Clippers roster because there are certain pieces on there that would help Minnesota still be able to compete this year. If they go out and get a guy like Tobias Harris from the Clippers, he's one of the most underrated players in the league. If they could trade Tobias Harris, get some money to go along with that and send that to Minnesota for Jimmy Butler, that would be an interesting deal. If I'm Minnesota, I'm looking at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the first round pick for the Clippers, who was a heck of a point guard for Kentucky, might be the best point guard in the draft class. That'd be another guy that you can build around too. But it's a very interesting situation, and it really goes back to athletes showing their power. And we've seen that multiple times now. LeBron,
especially in the NBA.
Athletes are showing their power. DeMarcus Cousins is showing what he wants to do. I'm not going to take money from over here. I'm going to go to Golden State. And let's be honest, this is one of the biggest and most craziest NBA off seasons. We talk about the NFL being 12 months around. The NBA is making a run for its money being here.
The
every
NBA has
single
overtaken
month.
the NFL because the NFL is no longer
stuff.
as well as off court. But no, NFL used to be a year-round talking point, and the NFL now is no longer a year-round talking point.
I mean,
maybe
look at
it's
the
8
headlines
months.
to the headlines today. There's a football game tonight, and all anyone's talking about is Jimmy Butler.
Exactly.
And
so basketball has easily become the year-round sport. If we're talking about looking at just America, looking at this nation, what sports are most talked about, and basketball has overtaken it.
Look at what we've had this offseason in the NBA. You've had LeBron change teams. You've had Kawhi Leonard change teams. You're going to have Jimmy Butler eventually change teams.
And with the Kawhi and Butler thing, these are all like big stories even before they changed teams because of the whole situation with Kawhi and not talking to the Spurs and all that weirdness. And then Jimmy Butler now just basically saying, no, I want to be traded.
You had DeMarcus Cousins, leave teams. And you also had DeAndre Jordan. Oh, and you had Paul George, who didn't leave a team like everyone thought he would. He stayed in Oklahoma City. That's like 5 or 6 of the top 20 to 25 players in the game that have changed teams in just this one offseason. So it's been a really crazy ride.
I have one thing too that I think we're neglecting to talk about here, and that's the idea. While he named his 3 teams that he wanted to get traded to, right? Let's not fail to bring up the Lakers in this situation, and only because look at the head coach of the Timberwolves. It is Tom Thibodeau. What does he love? He loves veteran players. And who gave a bunch of one-year contracts to veteran players over this offseason? The Lakers did.
I'd be interested to
and
see
I'm
how
not
the money
sitting
works
here,
out there.
Sure, but I'm not. I mean, and again, I'm not sitting here saying I think it's going to happen. But I'm saying let's not sit here and think that Magic Johnson is not picking up the phone,
at least looking,
this is an interesting situation because who's someone that the Lakers wanted to pursue anyway? Jimmy Butler. They've always wanted. That was something that they wanted. And that's something LeBron wanted. And so I can guarantee you that Magic Johnson sits in his front office and he's very interested in hearing this news today because he signed many one-year contracts, veteran guys, and he's like, oh, okay, they might take some of this off my hands.
And let's be honest here, when we see what Jimmy Butler is and the type of player he is, like you said, Binz, he's the top 15 player in the league. Kawhi Leonard is another one like that
top
who says,
says,
oh, I want to go to LA. Just because they say they want to go somewhere doesn't mean that team has to do that.
Well, look at the situation. Butler didn't say he wanted to go there.
Right.
And so maybe it could happen. But I'm saying I think it's very you have to talk about it.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that there's a situation where Minnesota's going to put the best package together that they can get if they really want to deal him, or they're going to play hardball and force him to play out. But this trade by the Bulls, it's looking pretty nice. Yeah. Imagine if Lauri Markkanen was wearing a Timberwolves jersey.
I was thinking about that today because as far as like what the Timberwolves gave up, they would still have Levine, they would still have Chris Dunn. And now you have Markkanen. I mean, Markkanen Towns, not a great defensive front court, but that's going to put up a lot. That starting lineup of Levine, Towns, Dunn, Wiggins, and Markkanen, that's putting up a lot of points. Those are a lot of guys who can put the ball in the basket.
Interesting thing. Good. Looking back, hindsight's obviously 20/20, but the Bulls did a very good job with that trade. Good NBA talk. We're going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk Illinois football. We'll get nitty-gritty covering about this game. Me and Eli will be there tomorrow. Alex will be on the field tomorrow. We'll get his thoughts on Illinois and Penn State. And then later in the show, we'll talk a little bit of Illinois basketball, possibly the biggest recruiting weekend that Illinois basketball has had in decades at Illinois. Stay with us on Illini Drive, WPGU 107.1. Welcome back to Illini Drive. We talked a little bit of NBA, Jimmy Butler, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Chicago Bulls in that first segment. This second segment, though, we're talking Illinois football. Big game tomorrow night. Illinois comes in 2-1. They will battle Penn State tomorrow at 8 o'clock. You can see that game on FS1, or you can just come out to Memorial Stadium for a pretty loaded night. I think they're giving out a lot of free tickets. I saw that they were giving out the $69 for 4 tickets package.
They're doing $10 for this game.
Yeah,
Student tickets, I saw were $10 for this game.
Pretty cheap deal there, but
they should be giving out free ones if I'm going to be completely honest.
Penn State, yeah, exactly. Penn State comes into the game 3-0, number 10 in the nation. They're a pretty good team. I mean, they average 4.33 sacks per game, which ranks 4th among FBS teams. Not pretty great for this offensive line, who's really struggled to giving up sacks. They're one of the worst. Illinois has one of the worst sack percentages allowed in all of the country. So that'll be an interesting battle for this offensive line. Trace McSorley, the Penn State quarterback, is really close to breaking 8,000 career yards. He's also rushed for over 1,000 yards in his career, and he has a chance to break about 8 or 9 records at Penn State before he leaves by the end of the year. He's a heck of a player. He's probably a shoo-in for Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. Probably Nick Bosa is probably the MVP of the Big Ten, probably the best player in the Big Ten, but McSorley is certainly in that discussion. But Illinois coming off a tough loss to USF. Eli and I were at that game up in Chicago at Soldier Field. And Eli, when you saw that game, it felt like we saw a lot of positives, but the competition is ramping way up. What does Illinois need to do to stick in this game with Penn State?
I think that this is going to be a very interesting game to watch on how Illinois now picks up these past 3 games, takes what they learned, and really applies it in this game. Because each game, the thing that we have seen, I've pointed this out a couple times now, is each game we have seen improvements from the game prior, which is something completely different than we saw the year before this. But now you suffered your first loss. And what set you back last year, the entire season, was a loss to USF. So you need to come out and show, and I do not think they're going to win this game, but you come out and you show that you can hang in this game and you can stay in this game. And even if it gets away from you, you play just as hard and you hang in there. But the key to keeping up with this Penn State game, or this Penn State team, is one, defensive line play. Your D line needs to have a great game.
Huge weekend for them.
I thought last year was going to be a big week, or last week was going to be a big weekend for them. They performed relatively well, but I would say that this week is obviously the biggest one, and guys like Bobby Roundtree, right, especially Bobby Roundtree for me, really needs to step up, because we saw him take another step last week, a little bit. He played better last week, but this is the week that he really needs to have a big game. And in general, though, it's all about the defense. And having guys back this weekend, which it looks like Illinois will be, having guys like Nate Hobbs and Bennett Williams in your secondary, where Trace McSorley otherwise would carve up your secondary. Having those guys, he still will. I will say, not might, he still will. But those 2 guys will at least kind of stop the damage, stop some of the punches being thrown.
They actually know what they're doing, and they're pretty
well,
good
and you
Big
can
Ten
put up Nate
and
Hobbs
defensive
can
backs.
go on your
Yes,
best receiver.
absolutely.
And before, you were in a situation where you were like, I don't know if I trust any of these guys on my best receiver, right? And so at least being able to have, hey, Nate Hobbs, Bennett Williams, Cam Watkins, right? Now
Tony Adams,
exactly. Now your secondary is looking what everyone thought the secondary was going to look like at the beginning of the year. But now they need to show that they're going to play like everyone thought they were going to play like in the beginning of the year.
Defensive line is a big key. Eli, you brought that up, and you know how much I love stats. Illinois defense has a sack percentage of 2.41%. That's 107th among FBS teams. Last year, Illinois had a sack percentage of 5.31, and it was almost the exact same defensive line last year as you had this year. The only exception was James Crawford, the Illinois senior who had 4 sacks last year, graduated and is now playing for the Green Bay Packers. But that Illinois defensive line has not been as advertised. They were really good in training camp. They had moments where you look like Bobby Roundtree looks like an NFL
They're really good in
prospect.
training camp, but they're really good against their O-line.
I was about to say.
Yeah, well, true, but like when you see NFL scouts come to training camp and they come and they say, oh, who's that number 97 kid?
Of course.
There's a reason why. And so, but that hasn't necessarily translated. Bobby Roundtree only has just 1 sack on the season. Isaiah Gay, always known for his speed rush, has not done much. And the Illinois coaching staff started Owen Carney against USF in that last game. So it'll be interesting to see how this rotation continues to grow, because Owen Carney's stronger and more physical and is better against the run, which is not Isaiah Gay's strong suit by any means. And if Owen Carney continues to make that stride forward, he's another sophomore to watch out for on that defensive line.
This defense, I want to point out too, over these past 3 games, just being there, watching it, analyzing the games, they run off of momentum.
Yes.
Right. This defense
and turnovers.
It's not about necessarily consistency at all for this defense. It's about a big play, a big hit, and what happens if you get a big hit on first down? Well, they're probably going to end up punting because this team on defense, they get really fired up and they get fired up quickly. And so it's about getting, especially in this Penn State game, it's about getting a turnover, right? It's about getting a single turnover and in the first half and lighting things up for you. And I think what's key with that too is we talk about the defensive line and we talked about the secondary. What's it time to talk about now? Well, it's time to talk about Jake Hansen and Delshon Phillips. These two guys at linebacker are key for this team. And really, two of their best defensive players. And so Delshon Phillips, for me, I think is such a leader on this defense. And guys just look up to him so much that he needs to have a big game. And I think
you're the only senior.
It's exactly. But the combo of him and Jake Hansen, we've already seen be pretty treacherous for some of these teams. And so the two of them, again, I mean, we talk about everybody on the defense having to step up, but the two of them, if they can get that big hit, that big play, right, that big sack, even let's say that if they end up blitzing, then that's gonna be huge for this team.
Takeaways are a huge part of this Illinois defense. Through the first 3 games, they're averaging 2.3 takeaways per game. Last year, they just averaged just over 1.5. That doesn't even count the turnovers on downs, which Illinois had 4. And that means if that number was added into the takeaways, Illinois would average over 3 takeaways per game. Binz, if Illinois can get 3 takeaways against Penn State, that would be absolutely massive. But this Illinois offense needs to move the ball. Offensively, running the football has not been a problem this year, but if A.J. Bush is back, hopefully you can get some separation back, and Lou Dorsey would be a really big part of that.
Yeah, and I think getting those weapons back offensively is going to be a big thing for Illinois because you looked at last week, and they're really, like, outside of Smalling, there was no separation at all to be found for Illinois, and especially when you got a young quarterback
Tough
like
job
Rivers.
for MJ.
It's hard to be fitting balls into tight coverage like that in your first start against USF. In a foreign stadium, I mean, yes, Chicago is Soldier Field was technically a neutral game, but that's not somewhere that Illinois has played recently, and that's not somewhere MJ Rivers has ever played before.
Yeah.
So, just a tough task when you don't have those weapons. So I think bringing those guys back would be good. But I have a question for the group: if you had to guess who has a higher completion percentage this year, MJ Rivers or Trace McSorley?
MJ Rivers.
It's MJ Rivers.
I knew that just based off of that question.
It's
like when you're taking a test and you're like,
it's
that's
a
a trick
But
question.
anyway, Trace McSorley is only completing 51% of his passes this year.
Not great.
Well, he does have over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns to go with those. That kind of measly completion percentage. What that says to me is that this Penn State team lives off big plays, and that's something that they've done for a long time. Last year, you looked at Barkley, big play guy. Mike Gesicki was a big play guy at tight end. Those guys aren't there anymore.
Deshaun Hamilton is another big one for them.
But those guys aren't there anymore. So I think that this is a Penn State team that this Illinois defense has to force them to drive the field. Don't give up the 60-yard play. Don't give up the 40-yard play. Make them go 5 yards at a time because eventually they will mess up.
And that's the thing, because Illinois has allowed 7 touchdowns this year. 5 of those have been over 25-yard touchdown plays. And most of those, I hate to say this, but most of those are on that safety unit. Yeah. Getting Bennett Williams back is absolutely massive for this team to not give up those big plays. Because if they force Penn State to drive down the field, it gives you more opportunities to get those turnovers, which Illinois has been very good at forcing.
It's weird, especially is Lovey Ball. I mean, especially what I've seen, it's crazy because the improvements that you've seen from game to game in this team, like I've said, compared to last year is really
remarkable,
astronomical. Just the changes they've made, but Lovey Ball is the biggest thing. Lovey Ball is taking away the football, but it's also when you go for the tackle, you're trying to rip the ball out and you're trying to punch the ball out. And you're finally seeing that. I think that's important. When fans are watching this game, start watching how these players are tackling. Because when they're going for these tackles, they're doing the peanut punch. They're trying to get the ball out.
You don't average 3 turnovers a game on accident.
They're not exactly, and they're not trying to just light a guy up. They're trying to wrap them up and then rip the ball out, and they've done that all the time.
The air. They've done that multiple times.
And
the
2 interceptions that they had in the USF game were because it was bounced off of one guy and fell into the hands of another. So teamwork is what it's all about, and that's something that we've 100% seen from this defense so far. And I think that just bringing up Lovey Ball is key. But this team, I think it's weird to think about, but the defense at its best, right? We're thinking about this defense at its best. Is actually the type of defense that can give Penn State problems when you bring up that with McSorley. It's the type of defense that can, because they do honestly rely off big plays, and that's something that they have done. And while they are consistent, yes, they move down the field and they can find their way down the field, they do rely on some big plays. And so if you can get that secondary back, and it's going to be tough this game especially because that they're the first game back, and they're playing in a season, and so that's tough. But if they're at their best, this is a team that can compete with this offense.
I agree that passing the football might not be Penn State's extreme strength, but when you still have Trace McSorley, it's a big plus for you. But really, Penn State excels at running the football. Miles Sanders has come in for Saquon Barkley and had no trouble at all. And yes, this Illinois defense has done a good job with takeaways, but they have not stopped the run at all. They have been awful against the run.
Well, that's where Jake
Hansen
and Delshawn Phillips really have to come into play.
Well, this defensive line has to be.
Of course.
Well, Jamal Milan's not going to probably play still, which is another thing. I talked to some team sources when I was at practice the other day. They said that he's been doing sprints. He's still recovering from that knee injury that he suffered during training camp. Remember, this is a guy that's had 3 or 4 injuries to his knee. But they're doing sprints. They thought he could play against Penn State. This was the targeted day that he could come back. But since he's not been practicing, they'll probably just hold him out because they have the bye week afterward, and then he'd be good to go for Rutgers. So that's a big thing. And running the football has been a problem or stopping the run has been a problem for this Illinois defense.
Yeah, everything has, though.
It'll be huge, though.
To be completely honest.
It'll be huge to see if they can compete because this Penn State offensive line, they're one of the most veteran offensive lines in all the Big Ten. They have 2 guys on there who were third-team All-Big Ten players last year. They have 85 career starts from their offensive line. They returned every single starter from last year. So it'll be a big-time problem, and it's up to that defensive line. But let's talk about the offense a little bit. A.J. Bush, we're not sure what his status is, but if he comes back, this Illinois offense could click even more, being able to throw the ball down the field now that you had Carmani Green. Now you add Lou Dorsey back. But this running game for Illinois has been a strength through the team through the first 3 games. How does Mike Epstein and Reggie Corbin continue this role, and how much would it help to have A.J. Bush back under center?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is having A.J. back is a necessity for this game. I mean, MJ has really done great in his absence for a backup quarterback, for a true freshman backup quarterback. He's come in, he's played well. I do believe that he's the future quarterback for this team.
Looks like a Big Ten star.
Yeah, he's a future quarterback for this team. But right now against the Penn, you can't throw him into the fire and give him Penn State. I mean, doing it with USF was already pretty scary for him and the situation that he had to go through at the end of that game. But you can't throw him to the fire with Penn State. You need to have your grad transfer come in.
You brought AJ here to do this.
To play in a game like this and have the composure. And he 100% will. He's not going to go out and be nervous against the Penn State team. This is a guy who's seen everything in the college game. And so he can go out there and feel pretty confident. And so having him back is huge. But I think you mentioned one name that I think is important to bring up for this game, and that's Carmani Green. I think that having Carmani Green back helps this throwing the football, helps moving the ball through the air, because before that, you didn't know who you had after Mike Dudek left. Ricky Smalling's been banged up. He was banged up last game, too. And then you have Edwin Carter, who looked like for a second was going to be a guy that rose up, and then he's taken out. And you've had nobody that's really been able to step up other than your running backs on the receiving end. You've had nobody. And Carmani Green is incredibly fast. This is a guy who, if you want to talk about someone who can find separation, this is a guy who can find separation. And A.J. Bush can give him the ball in space. So for me, Carmani Green is huge to have back for this team, who's kind of a guy that most people on that list of people that are suspended
completely agree.
Look at the least, and next to Deion Pate. But that's the guy that people look at the least and say, okay, he's not going to have that big of an impact. Well, right now, with this receiving core, he can.
I get it. Now, it makes perfect sense for people to think that way. Bennett Williams, All-American freshman last year, and then Nate Hobbs, All-Big Ten freshman of the year.
And Lou Dorsey makes big plays.
Yeah, huge, big-time piece. But I definitely agree that Carmani's influence should not be just thrown under the rug.
I would say behind Williams, he's the second most important person on that list, because you look at how their secondary's played, most of it's been over-the-top stuff that they've given up. You give up the kind of shorter stuff that you kind of give up with having bad corners, but the bad safety plays what killed them. But offensively, not having separation has just completely destroyed a lot of their momentum a lot of the time.
And separation is hard sometimes for Lou Dorsey to get, but just his big frame, all he needs is one step.
And just the presence of him running up the seam that makes you
someone
have
else
to think about
that
him.
when you are in that 2-minute drill going down the field right at the end of that game against USF, you need somebody that they're going to go, oh wait, we can't all guard Ricky. So
we have to guard the 6'6" tight end that can jump out of the gym.
Well,
just run straight
but also
down the
with
seam.
Carmani Green, right? Also bringing up Carmani Green again, because yes, obviously, we got to cover Lou Dorsey, which adds another element to it. But we have Carmani Green who can just run circles around us. I mean, this guy's incredibly fast, and he can find
runs a 4.5 40.
He can find his way. So it just it takes so much pressure off of Ricky Smalling, and it opens up this offense so much more than it was. And so, because yes, adding Lou Dorsey, great, right? But then you have Lou and Ricky. But when you add another piece, now you got 3 guys
And Sam Mays, who's been solid.
consistent.
Yes.
He's a consistent guy.
Good three. Good third receiver.
Yeah, of course. But Carmani, also, him personally, he needs to take a step up, right? He needs to take that step in the right direction.
It's all mental.
It is. And he worked really hard in training camp. I spoke to him in training camp, and he was really excited for this season. And told me back in Miami at home, he was working his butt off over the offseason. And learning what he said, the biggest thing for me is he's like, I'm fast, but I need to learn how to run routes. And he's like, my route running is what I need to improve. And if he can step on the field and he can improve his routes, then this is the guy you got to watch out for.
Carmani had 2 routes. He ran a bubble screen and he ran the go route. Yep. That is all he ran.
And if he can fix that area of his game, he's somebody that you really got to watch out for.
And we talk about the passing game, but this Illinois rushing attack has been great. And if you could have this difference where Illinois is able to throw the ball down the field, that opened up the game even more for guys like Epstein and Reggie Corbin, who have both had terrific starts. Epstein is averaging over 7 yards per carry. Binz, how big has it been to get this sophomore running back there?
I mean, I love everything they're doing with the running game. Every time they hand the ball off, I feel good about the chances of that play. And
offensive line's better too.
Even if it does get stuffed. I mean, last week you had like Kendrick Green out there making holes on that left side, which is incredible for a guy who was playing defensive line last year. What this offense has done as far as running the ball, and I think this is a big credit to Rod Smith, they're creative, they're consistent, and they're powerful. And those are the 3 things that I think make a great running game because they're able to get the ball to their guys in creative ways, make the defense off balance a little bit. They're consistent. I have not seen a ton of missed blocks. It feels like that offensive line is really in sync every time they have a play call in mind. Now, whether or not in pass protection they're as good, that's another thing. I'm just glad with the running game, and they're powerful. It always feels like they've got their running backs moving forward unless they're getting hit in the backfield. And coming from a guy who was a Seahawks fan for a long time, and still am a Seahawks fan, despite what happened on Monday.
Folks, he's wearing a Marshawn Lynch jersey.
Yeah. There's nothing more fun than watching a powerful running game, in my opinion. Just being able to enforce your will on other teams is a ton of fun. You get back those playmakers. Now you start adding play-action shots into the mix, get Dorsey on crossing routes, Green on goes, Smalling on goes. Just having weapons to go along with that running game is going to be so big.
And, of course, Penn State, obviously. I don't think Illinois, and no one thinks Illinois is going to win this game. The spread right now is Penn State by 28. Penn State is obviously just a different type of team. They're a different level that Illinois has, and so you probably aren't expected to win this game. But if you go out and you win and you lose close, that's what Illinois did back in 2006 before they went off to go to the Rose Bowl in 2007. And you need to be competitive against teams like this to prove what you can do in the future. And Illinois has the special teams unit right now with Blake Hayes and Chase McLaughlin. They have the secondary now with Bennett Williams and Nate Hobbs back, and then an offensive run, being able to run the football.
I think they have a great Lovey Ball team.
They have a nucleus to be able to compete.
And I think that's a statement to the way Lovey's built this team. Is there's a lot of questions like where's this going? But you look at what they've got now, and you can kind of see the plan. And I see how this can work against teams like Penn State, against teams like Ohio State. You control the ball with the running game. You take the ball away, and you have great special teams that never mess up. And that's how you win football games.
And if you're Lovey, right? He did. And sorry to cut you off there, but
go ahead.
He did something incredibly smart, which is something that he didn't necessarily do, or we see in the NFL, right? Because before it was always, hey, defense is Lovey. Like for Lovey, it's always defense. The team's always going to be that's going to be their strength, which will work in this Big Ten against these type of teams. But he gave himself Rod Smith, right? Which was great for him to do.
Underrated move.
In the creative offensive coordinators going with defensive head coaches is always a good idea.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, because I think he was clever. He's wise in the sense that he's been through so much. He's learned, and he's like, I don't know the college offense. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not going to understand these type of things. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to let him take it completely over, and now I'm going to focus on the defense. And you really are seeing it shape up. Because just in the way they tackle, like I said before, but when you watch this team, just think about what Lovey Ball is in your head and what that means, and you're going, okay, this could work. This could actually work for him. And a lot of people might say it before the season started, which is completely wrong. He's on the hot seat, all this stuff, right? That everyone just rolls their eyes at if you actually cover this team. You're starting to see why that won't be the case for a while, because he's getting guys that fit his system, and his system it could very well work.
And now you just need to add weapons. And you see this wide receiver group has major holes. You go get weapons, and that's what they've done in this class of 2019. They've gotten Fabian McCray. You already have Casey Washington on board. Marquez Beeson and Isaiah Williams are always 2 big-time athletic players who can play in the slot. Bryce Childress is another guy. And then Kyron Cumbie, a kid who's only 5'7" from Texas, but he runs a 40-yard dash in about 4.3 seconds. that's not only going to be a great wide receiver, it's going to be a great returner for Bob Legashevsky next year.
And I want to say this before we go to break. The guys who are suspended, you better play good tomorrow because you lost them the game last week.
He's calling him out.
No, I'm going to say it because
I don't think you're wrong.
because because those guys were suspended, Illinois is not 3-0, and that's the bottom line. And so you owe it to this team to come out and play well, because if you come out and you stink, then what are we doing here?
I think you're going to see a little bit of fire from these guys. And yeah, you're right. Lou Dorsey, Bennett Williams, Nate Hobbs, Carmani Green, they're 4 big-time players who have big-time roles on this team, and it's time for them to play up to that potential. We're going to take a quick break, our last break of the day. When we come back, we'll talk Illinois basketball, big recruiting weekend for them. We'll give our Illinois predictions for Penn State, and we'll also give you a player to watch out for tomorrow night. Stay with us on Illini Drive, WPGU 107.1. Welcome back to Illini Drive final segment. We got about 17 minutes left of the show, and it's time to talk some Illinois basketball. If you missed the first part of the show, we talked Illinois football. They'll play Penn State. We still got a little bit of football talk. We'll give our predictions right before we get out of here at 7 o'clock. We also talked a little bit of NBA with Jimmy Butler requesting a trade from the Minnesota Timberwolves. But now it's time to talk some Illinois basketball. Brian Binz will be covering Illinois basketball for the Daily Illini. Eli Schuster, my other counterpart, he is a guy who is the sports editor at the Daily Illini, so he covers Illinois basketball really closely. I obviously follow the team really closely as I work for Illini Inquirer. But Illinois has a big-time weekend. Terrence Shannon Jr. is on campus starting tomorrow for an official visit. Illinois feels fantastic about where they are with him, a guy who played for the McIrvin Fire, which is where Ayo Dosunmu plays. He played with Ayo Dosunmu, 6'6", long, athletic, bouncy guy. He's a Brian Binz guy. He's a guy who gets out in transition and goes and just likes to tear the rim off. They also have Oscar Shibwe. They're in the Final Four for him.
That's another Brian Binz guy.
He is another Binz guy. He's a
big Binz guy.
6'8", rim runner, rips and tears the rim off. Great rebounder. He's the number 22 recruit in all of the class of 2019. 5-star recruit. Illinois is in the Final Four with West Virginia, Kentucky, and Illinois, and then one other team who's not really in the mix as much. It's more likely those top 3 teams. Then, of course, E.J. Liddell.
Big one.
E.J. Liddell.
Who's that?
E.J. If you haven't heard, E.J. Liddell plays for Belleville West. He is a 4-star recruit, right on that brink there, almost a 5-star recruit. He was Mr. Basketball in the state of Illinois last year.
As a junior, has a chance to be Mr. Basketball for 2 years in a row. The final 3 for him is Illinois, Ohio State, and Missouri. For reference, Isaac, who was the last guy to win Mr. Basketball twice in Illinois?
D. Brown.
Were you expecting to stump him on that?
As a reference point, this is how big of a recruit this is. This is a guy this is a guy who's on that level of like
everything.
A guy who could be a program-changing player.
He is as close to a program-changing player as we thought. And, we thought Mark Smith was going to do that, as Eli mentioned that to me. But not everything is going to go according to plan. But E.J. Liddell checks off a lot of boxes. Obviously, the 6'7", 6'8" wing. He can play the 3. He can play the 4 a little bit, and he can also be an undersized 5. Dribbles the ball really well. Has a 3-point shot. Mid-range game is good as well, and he's just ferocious on the glass, and he plays really, really good defense. But Illinois getting all these guys on campus for official visits. E.J. Liddell is
all of them together, which is the most fun of the whole thing, I think.
Liddell and Shannon, they're expected to make a decision probably within the next 7 days. Like by next week, we'll know where E.J. Liddell is going to go for college, and we'll know where Terrence Shannon is, and Illinois is as good a chance as any. Eli, what type of weekend is this for Brad Underwood, and what would it constitute a good weekend in your opinion?
Oh, it's just another weekend. No, I think that's what Brad would say. But no, obviously it's huge. I mean, we just talk about it, and you mentioned it there, and you name the names, and you go over each player and how important it is for Illinois. They're not going to get all 3. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to get all 3. Knocking off one, just putting together one, I mean, that's great for this team. But just the ability to have all 3 of them here on campus at the same time is just one thing to show, hey, for Brad Underwood to say, hey, look, I'm able to get these 3 guys here for an official visit, and I'm in the running with you West Virginia, with you Kentucky, with these teams, right, for these type of guys,
Ohio
which is
State,
huge.
Missouri,
which is
Florida
huge
State.
for Missouri. No, but that's huge for this program to just say, hey, look at that. But I bring up all three of them at the same time because when they come in, that's just great for you to be able to, for one, they know each other, but you can say, hey, I'm going to sell you on, this is a package, right? If you three come here, right, even if you two, whatever it is, if you two come here, look what you guys can do. Think about what you guys can do. And look at the players you're coming in with.
Right.
I mean, being able to play with Io. Being able to play
Look
with
at the
Trent.
guards you can play with,
Trent
EJ.
Frazier. Yeah, look at these guards that you can join.
Hey, EJ, let's compare the guards down at Missouri compared to them to the guards
Exactly.
at Illinois. It's a different
You can
ballgame.
go play with a former Illinois one if you want.
Right.
But
He's the one that got beat out here in everything.
yeah, it's so great for Illinois for one, just to say, hey, look at our program. We're able to do this. We're in the running for these guys. We're in the Final Fours for these guys. That's important for us. But it's also, this is a real chance. This is a real shot. And it's one of the best shots you've had in a while. And so you got to take advantage of it. And I think Underwood, I do think he's going to pull off one of these guys. And that's huge for him.
Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to choose between Illinois and Florida State, a couple other teams.
What happened to DePaul?
The
That's a
bag
great
wasn't
question,
big
I think
enough.
the
right?
bank account ran dry for DePaul.
Yeah, let's talk on the court,
They were like,
Binz.
how much did you give him?
Let's talk on the court, Binz. What type of player would EJ bring to Illinois, and how would he fit in with this Illinois group?
Well, I think you look at E.J. Liddell, and he's just the exact kind of guy that Underwood's brought in as far as since he's come here. He's a guy who's versatile, he's a guy who's a team player, and he's a guy who plays hard. And that's the three things that I think Underwood's brought in. If you look at the type of guys he's recruited, the type of guys that played for him last year, those are guys who are versatile. They could play multiple positions. They can defend. They're not afraid to be hard-nosed. You look at a guy like DeMonte Williams, maybe not the most skilled guy, but he's probably the best rebounding guard on the roster at only 6'4".
Probably the best defender, too.
Which is very impressive. Guys like Aaron Jordan, like unselfish guys who sacrifice, play multiple
A lot
positions.
of skill, but not flashy skill.
Yeah.
It's like things that you might not notice.
But now you start
EJ's
looking.
got flashy
But
skill,
now,
though.
well, that's what I was going to say. But now you're getting those guys, except for they're on a different talent level. They have the same mentality as the guys who are already
Yes.
in, but these are guys who are putting their heads at the rim. And these are guys who can block shots above the box, above the rim.
And that can
for those
compete with
who
Big
aren't
Ten
familiar.
talent.
And if we can get, I think the best part is that all three of these guys have a spot on the roster day one. Obviously, you're going to find room for a guy like Liddell. Shannon could easily compete and win that 3 spot, especially next year with the roster kind of up in with AJ leaving, stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of turnover. And then
He'd play.
And then what's his name? Tshiebwe?
Yeah, Oscar Tshiebwe.
Tshiebwe. I mean,
He's a plug-and-play
anyone who's
starter.
watching West Virginia last year saw Sergio Canate. This guy's the same guy, 6'8",
Went to the same high school.
Brick,
Lived with the same
brick
people.
you know what house. The dude is absolutely built. He dominated the number 1 prospect in that class, James Wiseman, in the AAU circuit. So this guy's a competitor. This guy is an absolute animal, and if he comes here, Illinois fans are going to fall in love with this guy.
It's a huge weekend, and we can break down these guys and tell you all about them, but at the end of the day, it's up to Brad Underwood and his staff to close this thing down. Terrence Shannon Jr. is a commitment, is a commit that you should get. He's in your backyard. You've pushed for him for so long. He's a guy you should get. He might not play for you right away as a freshman, but he'd definitely be in the mix, and he can really grow. E.J. Liddell, you've been invested 2.5 years into this kid.
You got to get him.
You have got to close him down. And Illinois is the last official visit. That is huge. It's what the staff
We've
wanted.
seen this before. No.
Stop.
we've
It's a
seen
new
similar
area,
situations.
Eli.
Listen, this has hurt Illinois in the past being the last official visit because Illinois had Jalen Brunson done and sealed. And Jalen Brunson went to Villanova and on the last official visit, and they took him. Illinois had Jawan Evans sealed and done and delivered. Oh, and then Oklahoma State came in
With
and got
Brad
him
Underwood.
right at the
that
very
wasn't
end.
Brad Underwood
right.
yet, but-
You're right before Brad Underwood's tenure
The
there.
Brad Underwood influence, the stench was there.
Being the last official visit is massive in recruiting, and it'll be really, really interesting to see how Illinois values their time throughout this weekend, because it's not like having one guy on campus. They have to juggle 3 different people here, and when you have one guy, you can kind of devote everything to him. It'll be interesting to see how they game plan with him. What would be your game plan if you're an assistant coach right now? If you're all right. Let's break this down. Orlando Antigua is going to be working with Tshiebwe all day.
Yep,
Big man's
that's
coach.
his-
Jamal Walker has recruited EJ since he was about 6th grade. He'll be with EJ. And then your third coach, Chin Coleman, will be tight with his boy, Terrence Shannon Jr. If you're that guy, what's your sell for Illinois?
I mean, I would just say, look, this is a program that's on the rise, and you can be the face of the next big thing in college basketball because Illinois is one of the biggest, I'd say, Illinois basketball is one of the biggest sleeping giants in college sports. You look at the Chicago area, you look at just the Illinois in general.
Indianapolis, St. Louis,
just the Midwest in general, the amount of talent there. And then you look back, and they've got all the history that these Blue Bloods have. They've got maybe not the national championships, but they got the iconic like team in the Flying Illini. They've gotten Final Four appearances. They have arguably the best team that's never won a national title ever, and an iconic team from the mid-2000s. And I'd say, look, you guys can be the face of this new wave that's coming through in Illinois sports as far as basketball goes. Because yes, people are always going to love Trent Frazier. Yes, people are always going to love these guys. But you could be the chance to come in, go to a Final Four in your first 2 years, and then who knows where it goes from there. But you could be the best players on the best team in the last 15, 20 years of Illinois basketball.
What Illinois basketball needed was a chance. Now they got their chance. It's time to close.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the sell for football and basketball, right? The sell for football and basketball is, hey, you can come here.
I think the tradition in basketball is a little higher than football.
Yeah, but I'll say that the sell is the same as we're an up-and-coming program. That's
right.
The same sell. And you should come here to be the guy that can help us take that one step in the right direction, put us over the edge. It's a little easier to be able to make that sell in basketball than it is football, just because football has more people on the field at one time, right? More people playing at one time. But still, like that's a big sell for both teams. For me, too, it's also, hey, look at the type of program we are in today's day and age right now, in the sense that, hey, Terrence Shannon, right? You committed to DePaul. We don't know what under circumstances we can take guesses, but also,
we know.
I don't think those are guesses anymore.
Yeah, but that's the point exactly. Those aren't guesses anymore. But let's look at our program, right? Do you want to be involved in all that stuff, right? And a lot of times, yeah, of course, money's great, whatever. But it's getting cracked down right now, right? And it looks bad sometimes for these guys and for some of these programs. And Illinois right now is in a great position to say, hey, look at the stigma that's around college basketball right now.
We're clean.
We're clean. We're clean. Come to a program where we are clean, and come to a program where we are on the rise. And so this is a respectful
our record is clean
program.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can say anyone's clean now.
No, exactly. But I just think that is a sell at this point for players.
Sure.
I think it is, because players will worry about that and look at, and I think that's probably exactly what happened with Shannon.
Don't underestimate the talent that these guys could play with. Oscar Sheboy and EJ Liddell want to play with talented guards. Well, you get Aya
You got a couple talented guards.
Oh, you got Trent Frazier. Oh, you have Tevian Jones, who people forget about, but due to practice reports, I got some friends on the team. 6'8" guy who is absolutely electric off the bench. They think
this program's
he's the next
trending
scorer.
up, but it's program's trending up, and this program is respectable.
Which is key. They just need that one guy.
And this is the last thing I'll say for guys like Sheboy and Liddell, guys who have other big schools. If you're Sheboy and you go to Kentucky or you go to West Virginia, you're just another guy on that team. You
100%.
come to Illinois, you're number one starting, and you're a fan favorite right away. These are the guys who are going to be the core of the program. If you're EJ Liddell and you go to Ohio State, next year they might recruit over you. You go to
you're not starting.
You go to Kentucky and you're Sheboy, or you go to West Virginia and you're Sheboy. Next year you could not start. I don't see Illinois letting these guys come here and not be faces of the program right away.
It's true. And Brad Underwood and his staff have a giant task, and they also have a giant opportunity, and they could really, really make this a heck of a weekend for Illinois basketball. We got a couple minutes left in the show. We're going to do really quick. Let's go around the room. Alex, you too. You're not off the hook.
He is in the room.
Give me a guy to watch out for. Can be offense or defense for Illinois football, and give me your prediction. Binz, we'll start with you. Illinois, Penn State. What's the final score tomorrow, and who's the guy to watch out for?
Final score. I think that we were talking during the break, but me and Eli have good feelings about this game. I don't think Illinois is going to win. I think Penn State's there's the reason they're number 10 in the nation. They're very good. They're very talented. They're well coached. They're decently well coached. I'm not going to say James Franco's a great coach. Isaac might have a problem with that. I'm going too long. Score prediction 42-31 Penn State. I don't think that this Illinois defense, with the guys back, will be able to stop them consistently. I do think that this offense can make some moves now that they've got their weapons back. Hopefully the running game gets going early so they can kind of use that to keep themselves in it. Guy to watch out for, I'm going to say Lou Dorsey. I think he's really important, especially with Green and Smalling now on the outside and the running game the way it's going. Look for him to get loose over the middle.
All right, my turn, right?
Yes, all you.
Always,
the time is yours.
Always like going against the wave, so let's just do it again.
It worked last week, almost.
So Binz brought it up. I sat here during the break. I talked about I have an odd feeling about this game. The odd feeling is not that they're going to win. However, I will give my prediction that they will win, just to be the odd man out here. So my call here, I'll say that Illinois ends up pulling up an upset, huge upset. They're gonna walk away. Everyone listening just getting pumped. No, I think they'll end up pulling up the upset. They got a lot of stuff trending in the right direction right now for this team. This is going to be the best team that this should, personnel-wise, be the best team that they put on the field all season. So, and that is if AJ Bush plays. But it's going to be exciting to see. I think that let's say Illinois wins it. I'm going to go kind of low scoring. I'm going to say it's going to be 28-24. And I'll say that the
no late game field goal from Chase McLaughlin.
No, 28-24. And I'm going to say it'll be a late game interception that will seal the deal for Illinois by Sir Bennett Williams. But and then I'll say that's my guy to watch out for as well. Bennett Williams, watch out for him. He's going to be fired up coming back.
Alex, what you got?
All right, so way to take my guy, Bennett Williams.
I think someone else.
No. I would say Bennett Williams because I think he is a guy that can have a huge impact with this defense. That can definitely take them to the next level. I will give the score of 35-21. I think that's just how it's going to go down. But I do feel just
Penn State, right?
Well, yeah, obviously
okay.
Penn State. But I think right. But in my personal opinion, I think this is such an important game so that we can see what type of direction this team is going. And if this is a team that can come out at full strength or just about full strength and compete with a top 10 Penn State, then I think we have a better sense of direction that, hey, this team is on the uprise. Whereas if we get blown out, then there we go, back to square one.
100% agree with you, Alex. My prediction is Penn State 38, Illinois 20. I thought that this is a game where if Illinois will be able to run the football, but I'm concerned that they will not be able to stop
So Illinois
the run.
covers?
No, yes.
You said they covered.
great
Because
team
it's 28.5, I thought is the spread.
Yeah, 38-20 right now is what I have.
You said 38-20, okay.
Yeah. So I think what this is, game, if you won over Penn State, this would be an opportunity for you to take a massive step forward as a program. But I think you're 1 year away. I think you'll see a big-time win in a night game 1 year from now when they play Michigan at home.
My God.
That is the game that I think that Illinois fans should have circled, because if you beat Michigan next year, you're officially back. You're officially back. I think you're a year away. Again, a year. This is a game where Illinois is going to compete early. They'll compete into the third quarter. But Penn State, Penn State will kind of eke away right at the very end, and they'll beat Illinois 38-20.
No, they won't. Not when that end of the game interception happens.
I hope that we're coming in on Tuesday to talk about an Illinois victory where they're up 3-1. But we're going to have to get out of here. Listen to Jake and the crew on Monday for the Illini Drive. Thanks to Eli Schuster. Thanks to Brian Binz.
Thank you.
Of course, our producer, Alex Aguilera, stepping in the clutch. We'll send you back to the waiver wire now. I am your host, Isaac Trotter. You've been listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Have a great night, everybody.